It looks like Dana White's in trouble. Again. His recent power slap league has caught former wrestler turned neuroscientist Chris Nowinski's attention, and things are not looking good for the UFC president at all. He's now being shamed by Chris for exploiting fighters for his new league. And I gotta say, guys, I totally saw this coming. Think for a second. In what world is a league that's basically all about slapping your opponents supposed to not make the news? Sure, the UFC is already quite violent, and there have been numerous injuries along the way. But this new league? Yeah, I'm not sure how fighters even agreed to take part in it. And I guess Chris got wind of it too, since he's not exactly the league's biggest fan at the moment. After Dana's Power Slap League aired on TV recently, Nowinski shamed White publicly for the controversial sport, and it wasn't just Chris who did. There were plenty of others who joined in and thought that the league was just not it, to be honest. And if you've been following us for a bit, you know that we've been covering Dana White and all things UFC for quite some time now. You're probably aware that White has come under fire for underpaying his fighters, and it looks like the ghosts are back to haunt him again, since Chris has slammed his decision to exploit fighters for what's basically chump change in the UFC, or any sport for that matter. That's right, the stars of this new league have only been offered $2,000 to fight on the show. And sure, Dana's defending himself by saying that's how MMA started too. But that's really not that reassuring either. And remind me again, isn't that what the government gave to us as aid checks during the first year of the pandemic? Besides, try finding an apartment in New York to rent for under $2,000 these days. It's simply not enough to cover the cost of living. Sure, the fighters already enjoy a comfortable lifestyle, but when you're slapping to win, don't you think it calls for more than just a $2,000 check? I mean, yeah, if you win and deliver a slap knockout, you do get an additional $2,000. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that with the amount of pain these fighters endure, taking home such an embarrassingly small amount is really not worth it, especially considering the consequences of the entire thing. You see, slaps hurt. A lot. Even if you've never had to take one, there's something terrifying about hearing that smack. Sure, it's not as bad as a headlock, but on a scale of 1 to 10, it ranks pretty high on my pain tolerance scale. And that's also one of the reasons why I'm not sure why slap fighting is even a thing. Do people enjoy seeing other people get slapped? Are we surrounded by sadists? Is this some strange kink that people have that I'm unaware of? If it's that, then I guess I'm better off not knowing. But come on, guys. There are far greater things to watch out there than watching guys slap for a living. In fact, even the video from the league that's doing the rounds on the internet right now is a perfect example of why this sport should be banned. Yup, it's the one where Serene Kamsa gets whacked by Alexandru Gorcica. If you pull up Twitter and visit Chris's profile, you'll see a clip of a slap fighting contest from Romania and how this one dude's face swells up so much that it made me wince just by watching it. The guy who took the devastating blow was Serene Kamsa, and guys, he did not look pretty after the bout. In fact, when you take a good look at the guy, the side of his face that's been taking hit after hit is so red and swollen from the constant slapping that it almost looked like the side of his face would explode. Now, according to the rules of this sport, fighters cannot hit the temple, orbit, nose, ear, or larynx. That is, your cheek is taking it all, no questions asked. And if you notice, within 30 seconds of the clip, Serene's face goes from being his usual self to being disfigured beyond recognition. The guy even tapped his face to let the referee know his opponent had missed a mark. But considering the extent of his injuries, it was hard to figure out the off-limit areas. You won't believe it's the same guy if you compare him from his fight against Gorcica to how he was at the start of the championship. The half of his face that took all the hits was so bloodied and puffed up that it's gotten the attention of many people around the world who are condemning the sport. But that's not even the worst part. Did you know that, even after winning the bout against Alexandru, all of Serene's prize money has gone to cover his hospital bills? So much for getting slapped, huh? It's true though. Despite the horrific disfigurement of the fighter's face and of course winning the prize money, Serene's earnings are still not enough to cover his hospital bills. Kamza took home a sum of $7,800, but unfortunately, he requires a lot more medical attention than what his winnings can cover. And that's also one of the main reasons why Chris shamed Dana in the first place, too. You see, getting slapped is one thing, but when you add an insane amount of force to it, yeah, that's when things get messy. Sure, you're not supposed to hit any sensitive areas, but a blow to the face is still bad considering the traumatic consequences. There are plenty of stories of fighters who ended up with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, and that's become a cause for concern. What happens in CTE is basically that when you suffer repeated head injuries, your brain sort of sloshes back and forth a lot. It is, after all, trapped inside your skull. Anyway, when that happens, there's obviously going to be some damage to the brain. And over time, this could lead to stuff like dementia too. So, you see why this sport should be axed?
What is really sad about power slap is that it's an undefendable hit in which a person can put as much power as they possibly can into the hit. And so it is a recipe for brain injury and a recipe for disaster. You know, it gets compared to things like boxing or mixed martial arts, but the goal there is to avoid getting hit in the head. And here you can't avoid it. And so a situation is happening that has never really happened in any real sport before, which is somebody can just wind up and hit you with an unprotected hand. You know, just because it's your palm doesn't mean it's not your arm and the bones in your hand striking somebody.
And it's not just me saying this. Boxing writer Al Dawson also has the same opinion. After watching Serene's clip, he said that the whole thing was pretty grim to watch and that he felt bad for everyone getting involved, particularly for Serene, who was slapped so hard that he ended up bleeding and disfigured. Even MMA fighter Josh Barnett weighed in with his thoughts and said that he won't even call slap fighting a sport considering how pointless it is. He called the entire thing an event and said that it was probably the dumbest thing that's going on right now. And not just that. Josh also added that X-Arm seems like the Olympics compared to whatever the heck slap fighting is, and wondered, why do people even support this shiz? So true, Josh. They really need to cancel this entire thing ASAP. And it looks like podcast host Tony Marinaro seems to agree too. After watching the barbaric clip and seeing Serene's bruised face, he urged everyone that enough is enough, and that this whole thing has to stop. He said that slap fighting needs to be banned, and he's not exactly wrong either. It's just too damaging and illogical to keep calling it a sport. We've already got enough physically exhausting sports, and adding a rather horrifying one to the mix would be like sentencing oneself to death. That's all there is to slap fighting. We'll see you in the next video.